Less than a day later, same girl, same location. Diabloso introduced Sifo to Pala. Don't you think she's a great-looking woman? A little variation now and then can't hurt, can it? A little quickie? See how she's making eyes at you. Practice makes perfect, I tell you. Love-making requires experience and all-round expertise. Sifo felt embarrassed. He had no intention of committing adultery. Never would he be unfaithful to Condamnita. Diabloso seemed to be reading his mind. Doing it with another woman is simply amusement that doesn't make it adultery. Haven't you seen how Marco, your personal assistant, is taken with Condamnita's beauty? A good-looking guy who manages to impress Condamnita with his sweet talk. Don't be so naive. They must splurge too when you're not around. While I was cleaning the equipment, I saw them fiddling with each other with my very own eyes. Sifo had never known his parents. They had left him to fend for himself. His fear of losing Condamnita was proportional to his anxiety about becoming attached to her. Sincerity which is clouded by uncertainty soon leads to bad decisions. A bit of fun can't hurt after all. Some flirting, perhaps a bit more than that, will bring some peace of mind and make me more independent from the love of my life, he mused. Yet the name Marco kept bothering him to no end. What was going on here? He had given both of them, Condamnita and Marco, his utmost confidence. That to him meant hope and faith. Hope does often lead, though, to expectations, and it's a matter of waiting to see whether those prospects don't turn out to be illusions. His past had left him with deep scars, like so many old wounds nearly forgotten. Almost as soon as they're touched, the blood begins to flow again. What was happening between the two people closest to him? The seed of jealousy had been sown, Pala being the pawn in this treacherous game of chess. Sifo no longer trusted Marco in his captivating ways. This new impression outstripped his previous high opinion of Marco, of his ability to communicate with animals and to heal the sick with devotion and concern. Condamnita too began to lose his trust. Suspicion made his thinking unclear, his consciousness tainted. Nothing is more toxic in the mind than jealousy and spitefulness. The powder that Diabloso was mixing into his drink every day exceeded every expectation. It was gradually eroding his common sense. Blinded by rage and jealousy, he rushed out of the office. Neither for Pala nor for Diabloso did he show concern. Only one thing mattered: revenge and justice. Potenza had heard from Diabloso that Sifo was flirting with Pala. The rumors about Sifo's possible infidelity was spreading rapidly among workers at the lab. Potenza's blood boiled. In addition to Marco, he now regarded Sifo as a second rival who needed to be cleared out of his way, should he ever want to attain his goal. The gentlemen were enjoying their men's night. Patra had also been invited, but as expected, he failed to reply to the invitation. One of Diabloso's workers offered Sifo a piece of fruit. Sifo couldn't decide whether he should take it or not. Everyone had already noticed how distrustful he was during the last few days. "There's nothing wrong with that apple. Look, I've just taken a bite of it. Wonderful taste," Marco chimed in. "Yeah, nothing like an apple to quench your thirst." Marco was beginning to drive Sifo up the wall, constantly playing the friendly, good-looking guy. The more friendly and well-meaning Marco appeared to be, the more Sifo began to hate him. "What's that guy been getting up to with my wife this afternoon?" Diabloso smiled and said, "Your wife loves these sweet apples. Why so standoffish? Just take her that apple. It might be a nice surprise." The men kept on teasing Sifo about the piece of fruit, and he finally went for it. That evening, a rare and very powerful Tesla coil would be sold to the highest bidder. The coil was indispensable for carrying out in-depth research in the lab. Sifo had never managed to get his hands on one before. At the right setting, the electric discharge would provide all implants with free energy, an asset to mankind. A snake hissed in the tree behind the men and slipped away among the leaves. Marco encouraged his master to accept the apple and begged him to make a good offer. Under the influence of the poison in his drink, Sifo began to feel envy. His thoughts lost clarity. He accepted the apple and, proud as he was, refused to make a bid. As he walked away, he pitched the apple into the sewer and cast a scornful look at Marco. Diabloso bought the Tesla coil at a bargain price. Marco was dumbfounded. Blinded by jealousy and rage, Sifo lost his sense of what truly mattered in the development of his ingenious inventions. That's how he came to miss out on the Tesla coil. Now that Diabloso had managed to get hold of it, he had even more power. Sifo had little concern for what was going on around him. He rarely showed up at the laboratory, never allowing his wife to be alone for a minute anymore. He dragged her everywhere. Sometimes he didn't even give her the chance to dress properly. Confusion and unrest worsened his excessive distrust. Their palace was a mess. One morning he rushed into her bedroom and shouted, "Where is the handkerchief I gave you? I'd bet that you lost it long ago. Or maybe you gave it away or sold it for the money." Condamnita said that the handkerchief was her most precious possession. She always carried it with her. Every evening before going to sleep, she unfolded it and admired the dear's beauty for a time. The exquisite, refined aesthetics helped her to reflect and be aware of the beautiful course her life had taken. She had a sense of pride in her husband's love and his amazing gift to her. She pulled the handkerchief from under her pillow and showed it to her husband with a captivating smile. Sifo unfolded the handkerchief, inspected the embroidery. Seething, he turned his gaze to Condamnita. "I never gave you this cheap rag. What happened to the valuable handkerchief, you worthless bitch? On the previous night, Diabloso had a duplicate made and replaced the beautiful deer with a clumsy embroidered golden calf sewn onto third-rate silk. La barista hadn't noticed and had tucked the folded handkerchief back beneath the pillow when she woke Condamnita in the morning. Sifo slammed the door shut and left the house. He wanted to know where the original was, and he would spare no effort or expense to uncover the truth. Condamnita remained calm. The lessons in life in Patro had taught her that it was pointless to respond to unbridled rage. Any reaction would simply fan the fire. She had no idea what she had done wrong, having cherished the gift from her spouse. Nor did she understand how the piece of cloth could have been swapped for this worthless rag. After all, had she not kept this precious object with her day and night? She summoned La barista to her room. It was a warm and muggy evening in the city. The men from Sifo's laboratory had gone off to visit pubs and sidewalk cafes. After a hard day's work, it was time for some booze. Diabloso had asked Marco to come along for a bite, since all the lab workers were hitting town. Marco didn't normally drink, nor was he someone who would think of going to the pub on his own. Instead, he tended to stay at work a bit longer, in order to chat with the animals and patients and hear from them after the implants had been operating for several weeks. He was always curious about their experiences. Diabloso had made meticulous preparations for the evening. The animals were part of a testing and measuring program that could not be disrupted. People who had implants in place were with their families that evening. He had riled Potenza by telling him how enchanted Marco was with Condamnita, and how fond she was of him. Diabloso assured Potenza that Marco would be coming along too, as his colleagues had managed to coax him. After all, this was a special evening for everyone to celebrate a year of successful collaboration. Diabloso took Marco to the cafe. Most of the workers had already arrived, and tempted him into tasting the most appetizing drinks. A command of craftsmanship comes from trying things out. Refined recipes and combinations of divine fluids are the spice of life. Wouldn't that appeal to a researcher like yourself? Marco fell for it and soon became intoxicated. Suddenly, Potenza came storming into the pub. Clearly, he had been drinking too much. Boiling with rage, he grabbed Marco by the collar and dragged him outside. Not much resistance was offered by Marco in his state. Rumors about the fight spread quickly. By word of mouth, the story soon went beyond what had actually happened. Sifo was furious. His hatred for Marco, the man who tried to seduce his wife with all his sweet talk, only grew as a result. He hoped that Potenza had given him a good bashing. Marco was called to account by him and reprimanded for excessive drinking. "Master, I never drink. Before I knew it, I found myself in a pointless fight. I should never have taken a sip." If only. You're responsible for your own behavior. No use trying to put that if only nonsense over on me. I'm not at all impressed with your story. You can go pack your things. Your recent public behavior is shameful and vile. You're no longer needed here. Get out, and don't ever dare to set foot in here again. How could I ever trust you with the animals and people? You've damaged the laboratory's reputation, you drunk. Sipho's hatred had taken on such dimensions that he then offered Potenza considerable reward for teaching Marco a lesson. Without a minute's hesitation in accepting the offer, Potenza sniggered to himself. First Marco, that's a step closer to Condamnita. And after that, I'll get my hands on you, while even being paid for it. What could be better? Few words were needed to make Potenza commit an atrocity. He had only one aim, to steal Condamnita's heart by making a magnificent impression on her. He would guard her from betrayal and deception. Despite having already dismissed Marco from the laboratory, he made her believe that Marco was simply out to seduce her and ease her away from her husband. He was planning on taking over the laboratory, stealing all the inventions and selling them for lots of money. Potenza promised Condamnita that he would protect her from this imminent danger. Condamnita couldn't believe what she was hearing. This went against everything she felt. Patro had taught her to follow her heart, to not be misled by deceptive thoughts. But Potenza had managed to turn his hatred into a convincing, impassioned plea. Condamnita, at a loss, proved to be gullible. Diabloso spoke with Sipho, who was living in utter confusion, being fueled by his now boundless jealousy. Diabloso suggested that Potenza pay Marco a visit. This would clear things up and perhaps lead to revelations. That night, Potenza murdered Marco in a horrible way, with agonizing slowness. After having been tortured for hours, Marco died of his injuries. Diabloso handed Sipho the original handkerchief embroidered with the golden deer. The silk cloth was now stained with Marco's blood. He refused to surrender it, fought for it as if his life depended on it. We found it in his back pocket. Sipho exploded. He had only one thing on mind, to destroy all the evil that had descended upon him in one massive purge. Once the match has been lit, the fireworks are about to begin. Diabloso simply had one objective: to completely destroy Sipho, his laboratory, his ideals, his entire being. The ever-doubtful Potenza gained self-confidence in a dangerous manner through his nasty yet successful deeds. He became reckless. Sipho praised his fearlessness and determination. Potenza's growing sense of identity began to surpass his self-knowledge. He didn't realize that he was being manipulated, and how easy it was to goad him into performing sly tricks. Blinded by single ambition, he wanted only to marry Condamnita. Sifo was the final obstacle. Diabloso convinced him that Condamnita was being protected by mythical creatures, spirits, and perhaps even demons, who first had to be eliminated. This will require courage. You're the only guy I know who has the guts to solve such dangerous matters. Diabloso invited Potenza to meet him at a secret location, which could be visited only by certain individuals. Not that Diabloso was one of them. He merely wanted to give him that idea in order to win him over. Actually, he had no idea what this tangle of stairways meant. He persuaded him into thinking otherwise. It's a system of stairways in which every step reveals a new strength in you, a power previously unknown to you. Walking through this labyrinth-like structure in the proper manner will provide you with supernatural powers so that the shadowy guardian spirits, mythical creatures, and demons will be made visible to you. The capacities acquired in this system of stairways will enable you to eliminate these illusionary forms of existence with a magical instrument. He handed Potenza a dagger that would give him the magical powers to eliminate any opponents that he may encounter. The weapon had more power in Potenza's imagination than it actually had in terms of magical fierceness.
My friends, that evening I felt quite restless. Something was amiss in the star systems far from my own time and place. Impulsively, I cast off my white garments and realized that from this point on until the end of time, I would appear in red. I couldn't entangle myself from the mess I was in. There was something fundamentally wrong, and that disrupted what was supposed to be keeping everything in balance forever. No longer was there a choice between dressing in white or red. White stood for peace, red for preservation, struggle, and safeguarding peace. At this point, facts had become so unsteady, and the potential for harmony and stability so uncertain, that my white clothes, having lost their radiance, were mere rags. I was furious, and I became dangerous. Throwing my white togs into the fire, where they went up in flames and were reduced to ash, set off to wage war. Great goodness, anger often causes one to lose a sense of reality. I let myself be carried away by my impulses. I anticipated what would take place. In the past, I was able to influence the course of things, but now in my rage, I had lost an awareness of time. Facts began to elude, to intervene, and to manipulate reality with my strength of mind despite any time difference. Driven by my urges, I felt like a bull in a pen, roused by the attire that I had created for myself. I was losing my grip on reality. How could I ever continue to protect Condamnita, the woman from my vision, as written down in future history? I was behaving like a man blinded, robbed of all insight. Things took an unexpected turn. I had never expected this, since everything seemed to have been constantly under control. It just showed me how treacherous certainties can be. Ultimately, they mean little. Nothing remains definite, and everything takes its own course. I felt trapped and lost. The image of how things should have gone was crumbling before my eyes. Time and place were becoming blurred. Can you imagine this, my friends? I wasn't even sure what universe I was in. Despite the knowledge and wisdom that I had acquired over the years, My personal involvement in these circumstances began to distort my sense of reality. Oh, my friends, the administered poison had also tainted my own mind.
Potenza had made his way to the system of stairways, then walked up and down every step. The more steps he mounted and descended, the more strength he could feel growing within himself. It made him feel totally in control, super powerful. Suddenly, a white wolf appeared before him. Without a moment's hesitation, he took out his knife and began stabbing at the animal like a wild savage. A scene of brutality, blood gushed forth. Potenza saw how the animal's white fur became soaked with blood, turning it red. But when its entire coat had turned red, the wolf rose up and suddenly assumed a different shape.
Beloved friend, although I had been thrown back and forth in time, it seemed as though I was getting a hold on the situation. I saw the brutal murder of the wolf, an animal that had sprung from Potenza's imagination, an illusion that Diabloso had conjured up in his mind. To me, it was obviously a trick that allowed me to switch places with the wolf.
Before Potenza even realized what exactly had happened, the situation had taken on a totally different form. Startled, he brandished the knife. The wolf, first bleeding profusely, was now gone. He hadn't realized that this was a mythical creature, one that exists only in tales. While they might bleed when stabbed, they can never be killed. Their manifestation is an illusion. The attack on the wolf had been a figment of Potenza's imagination.
Recklessly, he waved the knife about. I was all over the place, agile as a monkey. I swept rapidly up and down across the system of stairways. Before Potenza had a chance to strike, I managed to be far above or beneath him. Despite running about at his wit's end, he failed to catch me. I made his head spin. I shrieked and laughed with joy at his confusion. At a certain point, I dashed right through him. Potenza's head was turning in every direction. He could no longer keep up with me and lost his balance. Tumbling down onto the granite stones, he was pierced straight through the heart, and his blood began to flow down over the steps. As I leapt across the stairway, I could see the life draining out of Potenza.
Diabloso assured Sifo that Potenza had taken care of things. Don't worry. Potenza made sure Marco won't be getting in your way anymore. Here, take a sip. You need it right now. Diabloso handed him the cup containing the hate-enhancing poison. Marco was a thankless son of a bitch. You trusted him with your secrets. What does the jerk do? He starts courting your wife. I'm not at liberty to judge your spouse, however. All I can say is, a woman who marries in secret can never be trusted. Sifo became infuriated. My dear fellow, Marco is no longer a threat. Your faith in your wife is broken. That's difficult to heal. Your relationship is like a mirror in which you can see each other's reflections. When the mirror breaks, it can be repaired. Broken trust can be rebuilt, but the lines of fracture will always remain visible. Suspicion will haunt you. Time and again some charmer will come along and be her heart's delight. She's hooked on that kind of attention, having been raised in such isolated circumstances. Now that she's had a taste of freedom, her time has come. "No, never ever!" Sifo shouted. His words were filled with venom. "Try this, my friend." Diabloso gave him a little bag of powder that he had obtained from the alchemist. "It works very effectively. She won't notice a thing. It'll put her to sleep and gradually end in death, guaranteed to do the job. You'll get over it soon enough." Sifo accepted the parcel, and his feelings calmed at the thought of this.
Good heavens, friends. It's not enough to drive you mad. Having just recovered from the adventure with Potenza, I now had to witness this scene. At this stage, I needed to be ubiquitously alert at all times. I came rushing, wanting to change Sifo's mind, but Sifo was so filled with hatred. The poison that Diabloso had given him made him blind to the people like myself. I was unable to get through to Sifo. No matter what I did, it made no difference. Sifo was fixated on the poisoned cup, blazing away in his imagination. Friends, I feel stricken with paralysis. Nothing could change this situation.
Sifo kissed his wife goodnight and placed the cup containing poison next to her bed. The expression on his face showed a range of emotions: hate, love, and profound sorrow. He left the room in despair. Condamnita was a very sensitive person. The tension that she discerned in her husband over the past few weeks had been a source of some concern. Finding it difficult to fall asleep, she asked Labarista for advice. Loyal as ever, Labarista assured her mistress that she'd prepare a herbal drink that would allow her to sleep undisturbed for hours. This would calm her. Sifo hadn't been gone for more than a minute when Labarista entered the bedroom with her herbal blend. Replacing the poisoned cup, she gave Condamnita one containing her sedative. It induced such a deep slumber that her breathing was scarcely audible, her pulse faint. And that was how Sifo encountered her the next morning. With mixed feelings, he left the bedroom. Revenge had been taken on this faithless wench. Even so, deep in his heart he did feel pain. Whatever the case, he would finally have peace. The suspicion and hate would subside in due course.
As we all know, acts of revenge rarely give satisfaction. The deed is done, the murder committed, but the malice continues to eat away at you. You'll be stuck with it for the rest of your life. The memory of it has made a deep wound in your conscience. Doubt followed by regret. Those sentiments will always haunt you. Did I get it right? Have I not been the victim of cunning and guile? You're left with uncertainty, and what's been done is irreversible. That sort of thing keeps on gnawing away at your heart.
In one of the corridors of the gigantic house, Sifo ran into Labarista. He couldn't restrain himself. "Justice has been done. The missing handkerchief was proof of infidelity. Condamnita had left it with Marco. Potenza found it on Marco." "Oh no, sir. That's a misunderstanding. I showed the handkerchief to my brother Diabloso because he was so curious about its beauty. He must have given back the wrong handkerchief by accident. Perhaps Marco mistakenly received it from Diabloso. I have no idea how that handkerchief ended up in Marco's hands. In any case, he didn't get it from Condamnita. That thing was absolutely sacred to her." In a complete panic, Sifo rushed back to his wife and began shaking her body. No response. He placed his ear against her chest. No heartbeat. He pounded on her chest, breathed air into her mouth. He listened but heard no breathing. At his wit's end, he paced back and forth, wanting to bash himself on the head. What had he done? He had fallen for betrayal and deception. His wife was innocent. He had been misled and deluded by his own imaginings. The damage was irreparable. Clasping her hand, he wanted nothing more than to be one with his wife. His love for her was stronger than ever. It had surpassed the effects of the poison that Diabloso had given him. Just as he consumed the remainder of the lethal powder used to poison his wife, La Barista came barging into the room. "Sir, what are you doing?" "Condamnita is in a very deep sleep. I replaced her evening beverage with a very strong sedative blend of herbs. No need to worry. She'll be waking soon." While Sifo's eyes expressed doubt, a faint smile appeared on his mouth. Condamnita was not to blame. My groundless distrust, fed by my ever-present suspicion, ultimately drove me to self-destruction. With these last words, Sifo died a slow death, hand in hand with the love of his life. A few hours later, Condamnita awoke to the sight of her husband's lifeless body. She burst out in sobs. What in heaven's name had happened here? La Barista tried to console her. Despite the kind words of her faithful servant, there was nothing that could alleviate her deep sorrow. It was a lost cause. A wolf cried out. It reminded her of her origins in Mother Earth. Later came an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Sifo, Marco, and Potenza. The hate-inducing poison no longer worked.
I rediscovered my strength, but still felt a profound weariness. With my final vestiges of energy, as an invisible guide, I led the investigators to the cause of all the misfortune.
All the clues pointed in one direction. Diabloso was found guilty of sabotage, conspiracy, attempted murder, and high treason. Yet he was nowhere to be found. He had left the laboratory via a secret gateway and was hiding in the city's catacombs, where he considered himself safe since he presumed that no one knew him there. Sifo's fame was unprecedented. He had helped and cured people from the urban underground. They remembered how he had gone into hiding among them. Everyone knew about his generosity. Even the vagabonds with whom Sifo had grown up abroad. always managed to keep up with his activities. Their pals in Kota Raksasa had told them about his generous ways. Sifo was their hero. Rikan Sifo Abadan, they called him. When the sad news reached them, they lamented his death. He hadn't managed to return, but he had indeed lived up to their promise, and that made him a star in their eyes. He represented passionate ideology to them. Selflessly, he had provided help to many. The boy who appeared out of nowhere, who had lived in their backstreet neighborhood. News of the betrayal and its fatal consequences spread quickly. The whole population of Kota Raksasa made an all-out effort to hunt down Diabloso. Not a trace of the scoundrel could be found. In its subterranean world, however, he was soon recognized by the drifters. Their revenge was ruthless, and before long the smell of burnt flesh began to fill the city's underground passageways. With furtive smiles, the vagabonds there warmed their hands over the fire on the evening of Diabloso's disappearance. That evening the fire blazed in honor of their hero. The villain had been punished. Revenge had taken place. Condamnita was inconsolable. For days and nights she grieved the loss of her husband. 40 days of mourning was traditional. 40 days were not enough. She wished for one thing only, to return to her very origins, to Mother Earth. This could only take place with the permission of the man who had once found her in the forest.
My friends, in the battle that I have waged to set things straight in the second universe, I have wasted my own powers. Although I did my best, I had to give in to a greater force. In the end, there was no way to tamper with fate. Exhausted, I returned to my time, to the first universe, and was able to only watch the story as it reached its tragic end.
Condamnita paid Patro a visit. At one time he had to surrender his daughter to the lover with whom she wished to spend her life. Wanting to keep her as his daughter, he had given her up for the sake of the unconditional love that she felt for the man in her life. Sifo with his amazing instruments, whom he had supported and eventually adopted as his own son. Now he was being faced with an intolerable request: to allow her to return to the origin of her existence, to the place where he once found her. For the second time, he was losing the woman dearest to him. With all his wisdom, Patro stood up to his emotions, just as he had raised his daughter to do so. He brought her back to the banyan tree where he had found her. Laying her motionless body close to the tree's roots, he then saw her fading into and becoming one with them. With tears in his eyes, he realized that the circle of life had come to a close. Through the branches, the full moon lit up the scene. A wolf's howl resounded through the forest. Patro turned around and began his daily stroll. not sure whether he would take the route through the desolate industrial zone or wander about in the forest that now surrounded him.
My friends, I tell you, people arise from nothing and return to nothing, a path that all are destined to follow. Alone, completely alone, though without a sense of loneliness, we slip away to that boundless infinity, that utter enigma.